Probably one of the worst ways to be murdered is by being burnt alive. This is why few crimes are more terrifying than arsons, and to identify and bring the arsonist to justice is not always an easy task. Today, we count down the top 4 mysterious and disturbing arson cases. Number 4. The Sydney Ghost Train. For over 40 years, Luna Park, Sydney was one of the most prominent amusement parks in Australia, and one of their more popular rides was the Ghost Train. However, on the evening of June the 9th, 1979, the Ghost Train became the site of a terrible tragedy when it was consumed by a massive fire. The fire broke out inside the tunnel while over 30 passengers were on the ride, and the majority of them would be pulled out of the cars to safety. Unfortunately, after the fire was extinguished, the remains of 7 victims would be found inside the tunnel. They included John Godson and his 2 young sons, Damien and Craig, and 4 adolescent boys, Jonathan Billings, Richard Carroll, Michael Johnson, and Seamus Rahilly. It was tentatively believed that electrical problems were responsible for the fire, but an investigation could not conclusively determine the cause. However, in May 2007, a woman named Anne Buckingham came forward with a shocking allegation. Buckingham was the niece of Abe Saffron, one of the most notorious underworld crime figures in the history of Australia. Saffron had recently passed away and was suspected of being responsible for numerous acts of arson throughout his life. Buckingham claimed that her uncle had been intent on buying Luna Park, and although he never intended to get anyone killed, Saffron ordered the Ghost Train fire as part of a plan to gain control of the park's lease. Even though Buckingham soon recanted her statements, they were still published in the Sunday Morning Herald. After nearly 35 years, it remains a big mystery whether Abe Saffron was responsible for the Ghost Train fire, or if the whole thing was just a tragic accident. Number 3. Evelyn Wagler. In the fall of 1973, 24-year-old Evelyn Wagler separated from her husband and child and moved from Chicago to Boston. On the evening of October the 2nd, Evelyn was only 2 blocks away from her home when her car ran out of gas and she was forced to walk in the opposite direction to the nearest service station. Evelyn filled up a can with gasoline and was carrying it back to her car when she was suddenly approached by 6 teenagers who dragged her into an alley and forced her to pour the gasoline on herself. After she complied, the teenagers lit a match and set Evelyn on fire before running away. After Evelyn rolled on the ground to put out the flames, she struggled to make it to a nearby store to summon medical attention. She was taken to a hospital and died a few hours later, but managed to tell the police that 3 of her attackers had recently made threats for her to move out of the neighborhood. There was a lot of controversy over the incident because a Burt Reynolds movie named Fuzz had aired on television a few days before the murder, and its plot involved the killer dosing homeless people with gasoline before burning them alive. It was believed that Evelyn's attackers may have gotten the idea from the movie. In spite of the mass media attention that this horrible crime received, the 6 teenagers who burned Evelyn Wagler alive were never found. Number 2. Joey Lynn Offit. In July of 2007, 33-year-old Joey Lynn Offit was taking care of her newborn son at her home in Sykesville, Pennsylvania. The child was only 6 weeks old, but Joey was currently separated from his father. In the early morning hours of July the 12th, there was a loud explosion at Joey's house and it caught on fire. Once the fire was taken care of, the remains of Joey's infant son were found in a bathtub, but Joey herself was nowhere to be found. It was soon confirmed that the fire had been started with an accelerant, so this was clearly a case of arson. The last verified sighting of Joy was on July the 4th, but no one could confirm seeing her at all during the week leading up to the fire. Joy's vehicle was also missing, so it was initially suspected that she might have killed her son and started the fire before running away. However, on July the 15th, Joy's abandoned car was discovered several hours away in State College. It was parked at an apartment complex where Joy had previously lived, but the manner in which the car was parked has led her family to believe that she did not leave the vehicle there herself. It's still unknown if Joy Lynn Offit was responsible for the fire and the death of her infant son, but there has been no trace of her for nearly 9 years. Number 1. The Upstairs Lounge. The Upstairs Lounge was a prominent gay bar in the French Quarter of New Orleans, located on the second floor of a 3-story building. June the 24th, 1973, was the final day of Pride weekend in the city, and approximately 60 members of Los Angeles Metropolitan Community Church, the only gay church in the United States at that time, were attending a get-together in the lounge. That evening, the downstairs buzzer was heard, but when one of the patrons attempted to answer the door, he was shocked to see that the staircase was engulfed in flames. The patrons made a desperate attempt to escape, but the fire quickly spread upstairs. In the end, a total of 32 people lost their lives in the disaster. Since an empty can of lighter fluid was found on the stairwell, arson was immediately suspected. The prime suspect was a local hustler named Roger Nunes. Nunes had been frequenting the upstairs lounge shortly before the fire started, but was ejected after getting into a fight with another patron. He reportedly said, "I'm gonna burn you all out," before he left. Nunes was questioned by the police on numerous occasions, but always maintained his innocence. However, one of Nunes' friends stated that he would often get drunk and confess to starting the fire, but recant once he became sober again. Nunes committed suicide in November of 1974, and even though it was never officially confirmed that he was responsible for the fire, the case was officially closed in 1980. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, make sure to tune in again tomorrow for another brand new episode.